Okay, so this is going to be day 4 of our lesson, and in this lesson we are going to be creating something new. So let me go over here, right click, horizontal split, and just split my screen, something around here. Then I'm going to go over here, go to image editor, and just open up my image. Now you can see in this particular case, we have more than one props that we would be working on. Up until now, it's only been like one item that we have been working on. But in this case, it's multiple objects. So this is a good way to practice modeling and get comfortable with all the Blender tools that we have learned so far. Over here, I'm going to create a human reference. To do this, just go to Edit, Preferences, search for Rigify add-on, and make sure it's enabled. Once it is, you can go to Shift A, Armature, and add a human rig over here. I prefer using this as a measurement tool. It's just much more convenient. Now over here, I'm gonna go to Mesh and add a cube. I'm going to move this cube above the ground by pressing G, Z, and then 1. And over here, I'm going to go into wireframe mode. I'm going to change my pivot, transform pivot instead of median point. I'm going to change this to 3D cursor. So when I scale, you can see it's scaling from the 3D cursor. Now this is convenient. When I'm scaling, it's not going below the ground and I don't constantly have to move it up. I'm just going to scale this according to the room size that I want. I'm going to make this wider and maybe scale it on the y-axis. Something like this works fine. This is not something that I need to be too concerned with. I can always change this later on, so it's not a big issue. Over here, I'm gonna go to Object, Apply, and Apply Scale. Now for this cube, we don't need this face, and this face. So I'm just going to delete all of them. So we are only left with this kind of thing. Now over here, I'm gonna go to add a modifier and add a solidify modifier. Give it some thickness just like we see in our reference. Now I can either go do this outside or inside. For now, let's just make this value negative so it goes outside. And you can see it's not equal on all sides right now. There's like this thing going on over here. So I'll just turn on even thickness. So basically it creates equal amount of thickness for all sides. And over here I can also add a bevel. Let me reduce the bevel amount and maybe increase the segments, something like this. I think this looks fine. Now that we have our room, we can start layering this. So okay, I think it should be a bit more wider. So I'm gonna go into edit mode and just move this over here. Something like this. I think this looks fine now. Okay. Now we just go in and add in props one by one. In this particular room, I think the bed is the biggest one. So let's just add our bed to get an idea. I'm gonna go over here and add a plane. This is going to be the frame of the bed. I'm going to move it up above the ground, scale it on the Y. I'll just change my pivot back to median point. Scale it on Y, move it over here, move it down, and move it back. Something like this. Sure. Okay. And I will give it a solidify modifier. Give it some thickness, maybe in the negative. And for now, let's also add a bevel modifier on this. Adjust the strength and okay, something like this. For now, it's fine. Okay. Now, on top of this, we also need to have our back legs and these legs over here. So let's just add these. I'm gonna click over here, Shift A, Mesh Cylinder, and scale S, Shift Z to scale it on all of the axes except for Z. Then G and Z, move it up, maybe make it a bit more thinner, something like this. And let's place it where it's supposed to be. Sure, something like this. Then I'm going to select the top face over here and just move it down. Somewhere along here, I think is fine. Okay. I think this should be moved just a tiny bit below, and this should go out just a tiny bit here. Okay, for now this looks fine. I'm going to move my pivot back to the center. So let's go object, set origin, origin to the center of mass. Then I'm going to add a mirror modifier and basically mirror this on all four sides of the bed. Something like this. Then we need to duplicate this to create this and this over here. So I'm going to Shift D, duplicate this, remove the mirror for now, rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Then press G and Y, move it over here, S and Y to scale it on the y-axis. Then I want to scale it all of the axes except for Y. And you can see it's getting thinner, which is what I want. Let me just apply the scale so it does it equally. Okay, something like this, maybe just slightly thinner. And then I can move it up over here, then duplicate it and move it down over here. Right. And in between these, we have these wooden planks. So let me just add them. Again, I'm going to move my 3D cursor here by Shift right click, then go to Shift A, add a cube, scale this down, scale it on the Z axis, place it over here, make it match the frame. Sure. And I'm just going to add an array modifier to make multiple copies of this. Okay, I think this looks fine. And then over here on top of this, we need these spheres over here. So I'm just going to do this in edit mode because that's more convenient. Otherwise, I will have to add mirror modifier for all of them too. So I'm going to press Shift S, cursor to selected. So my cursor is over here. And then go to add menu and add a UV sphere on top of this over here. And then I can scale this down and you can see it's already being mirrored on all four sides. If this is too confusing, you can do it as a separate object. I just prefer doing it like this. Okay, and now you can see we have all of this done over here. Okay, I think right now this is way too tall, so let me just make it slightly shorter and scale this down maybe just a tiny bit more. Scale this into, and these kind of adjustments like you keep on making as you add more and more stuff, things become more clear. We also need to mirror this to the other side, so I'm going to use a mirror modifier and I'm going to use the bed, mirror, bed, mirror, and bed. Right, so we have everything added over there too. Then we need our, so my frame should fit inside this thing, first thing, and I think it should be just a tiny bit more down and a tiny bit more slimmer, something like this. I'm going to duplicate this to create the cushion, the mattress for the bed, and I'm going to scale this up. Okay, let's just make it more slimmed down. So this can be more wider. Okay, and right now the bevel, it's using the same bevel as for the other object, so we're not going to use that bevel. For this one, we're going to have a more wider bevel, so it's more softer, and I can subdivide it more. So again, it feels more softer. Okay, I think for now this is fine. Okay, Right now, I think my frame is way too down. This back frame, it needs to be slightly more bigger. And for that, I need to apply the mirror over here. So I'm gonna go in and apply the mirror modifier for all of these objects. Okay, then I'll select all of these and I can go into edit mode. Just select the top vertices in wireframe mode and I can just press G and Z and move all of these up. Something like this, right? And yeah, now it matches a lot better. Then over here, we need to add our pillows. Usually for pillows or things like that, we use cloth simulation to create them. There are like a bunch of tutorials here that you can find, but I'm also going to quickly show you how to make them. Okay. So first thing, let's just arrange our scene. So this is going to be my room. So I'll just call it interior or walls or something so I know what it is. And then everything else that I've created over here, this is a part of the bed. So let me just move all of these into a new collection and I'll just name them bed. Okay. Now over here, I need to create a pillow. So let me just hide both of these for now. And I'm going to shift click over here, mesh, cube, and make it wider, just like how wide I want the pillow to be. And maybe something like this. I think this looks fine. Okay, now I need to subdivide my cube a bunch of times before I can simulate it. Simulation, it requires like a lot of topology, especially cloth. So let's just search over here for subdivision and I'm going to use simple so it doesn't deform my mesh. And I'm going to subdivide it a few times, right? You can see if I go into wireframe mode, turn off optimal display, this is nicely subdivided. Also, Control A, apply scale, so the scale is 1:1:1. Now, to simulate this, you have to go into your physics tab and like turn on cloth and all that. I usually don't prefer this. I use this add-on which is completely free to use. This is the name of this. I don't know how to pronounce it, but this works very well for cloth simulations. It just does what you would do here, but it's a lot faster and a lot more convenient. It's just easier to handle overall. So over here for simulation frames, I'm just going to make it 250. Then I'm going to, with this selected, I'm going to add cloth over here. I'm going to turn on. Okay, so let's do this one by one. First, I just enabled my cloth. Now, if I play, you can see what happens. My cloth is falling on the ground. There is no ground, so it's just falling in air. First thing we have to do is go down over here and go to property, field weights, and turn off gravity over here, right? So now, okay, to reset your sim, you either click on this reset sim button or you go to your end frame and just replay this. And now it's simulating again. But we don't see a lot of the things happening. It's because we have only made it a cloth, but we haven't tell it what to do as a cloth. So over here, I'm going to enable self collision and let's just play this. Okay, nothing much happens because there's no gravity being applied, so it's not going to do much. But that's fine. We'll just keep the gravity at 0 for now. I'm going to turn this use pressure value over here, and basically what that's doing is think of it as like a balloon and you're adding some gas to that balloon. So that's what this pressure does, right? It's up to you how much value you want. For now, I'm just going to give this 0.2 and I'm just going to play this, right? You can already see that this is getting puffed out, and the more this pressure value is, the more it's going to puff out. Okay. And over here we have this shrink factor. So normally whenever you're using pressure, you're only also using shrink factor. And basically what it does, as you're pumping it up, the cloth is basically trying to resist that push, and it creates a more realistic kind of look. And this is usually in negative value. So I'm just going to make it minus 0.2, and pressure, I'm just going to make it 3 for now. And let's just play this. Okay, much better, but this is too big right now. So let me, okay, sometimes this happened. It's fine. Just reset your sim. Okay, I'm going to scale this down on the all of the X's over here. Sure, something like this. And then I'm gonna resim this. Okay. Again, this kind of thing happens a lot when you're using simulations. Just go into edit mode and tap back out and just reset your sim and it should be fine. Okay, now you can see as the cloth is pushing, it's creating this kind of nice folds over here. And you can adjust this value as much as you want. Okay, maybe I want a lesser value. And a higher value of pressure. Okay, I think this looks fine as a pillow. Once we are happy with this, okay, let me just make sure my scale is 111 and maybe just make it slightly more thinner. Okay, and I'll just do this once more. Okay, I think this looks perfect now. I'm going to just click on this so it basically accepts this, and over here anytime you can see I go back into edit mode, it starts to simulate again. I want Blender to remember this mesh in this particular state. So what I'm going to do is apply this subdivision and apply this cloth, and this cloth triangulation I'll just remove this. It's added by the add-on, but I don't really need it. Right? And now this is an actual mesh that we can mess around with. Okay, now I'm going to check my room to get it back, and I can select this, I can scale this down, rotate it on the Y, maybe something like this, and place it where it's supposed to go. Okay, then I'm going to duplicate this, move this forward and scale this down. This is going to be the smaller pillow. I don't want my folds to be exactly the same on this one as they are on the other one. So something you can do is over here, go into sculpt mode. This is basically a way of like moving geometry, but instead of doing it by hand in edit mode, we are doing it using brushes. So if I go into sculpt mode, you don't have to do like you don't have to know anything about it. Just search over here for smooth brush and just click on this and adjust the strength to maybe 0.3 or something. Press F to make this bigger over here and then just click and smooth this out. So let's say I don't want these folds over here, so they don't look completely identical. For now, this should be fine. We're not going to do big changes over here. Right. And now you can see both of these don't look completely identical, so it's a lot nicer. Okay. I think I'm happy with this. Now over here, we can add our uh, okay, we can add this on top of this. For this, we don't really have to simulate. We can, but we don't really have to. So I'm just going to create a cube, or we can just extract this over here. I'm just going to Shift D to duplicate this, scale it on the Y axis, scale it on the Z axis, move this down. Over here, I'm going to apply my solidify modifier, then go into edit mode, and let's just move this back. Sure. Something like this. We don't need this bottom face. We don't need this over here either. And something like this should be fine. Okay. Now let me just add a solidify modifier on top of this and move it above. Again, turn on even thickness so it's even on all sides. Okay. I think something like this is fine. Okay, I just duplicated this part over here for the top part, and for now I'm just going to separate it as a separate item and just move it slightly up, something like this. Okay, and this looks fine. Over here, maybe I'll just slightly extrude this and scale this in, see if I like it. No. Okay, I'll just keep it as it is. Okay, now let me just turn on my walls over here and we can see the size of the bed in comparison to our room, and we'll have a window over here and we'll have this bookshelf over here. So everything looks fine so far. I think the size is okay. Now on top of this bed we also have this engraving or whatever. So I'm just gonna go into my front view, and over here, to make this, the simplest way is to using a simple plane with a skin modifier. Now we haven't used skin modifier before, but basically what it does is, if you have a plane over here and I delete everything of this plane and only keep this vertex over here, and I add a skin modifier to this, it converts that one vertex into a cube. And now if I extrude this, you can see I can get a complex cubical shape using just this one vertex, right? So it's super powerful and super useful in cases like this. So I'm going to shift click to add my 3D cursor over here, then create a plane, rotate it on the x-axis by 90, then on z by 90, scale this down, move it out, go into edit mode, select the vertex, the one that I want to keep, and the rest I'll just delete. So X, delete vertices. Now with this vertex selected, let me just move it in place over here, and I'm going to just map out the shape as roughly as I see. I don't need to be too precise with it, just like I'm trying to draw it out as best as I can. And you can see it's a very rough drawing. Sure, looks good enough. Okay, and I'll just add a subdivision modifier over here, subdivide it by 2 times, and now you can see this looks a lot better, right? So even if you did a rough drawing just by hand, subdivision will make it much better, and then you can move these around to like make it more precise if you want to. Okay, let's just say I'm happy with something like this. Sure. And over here I'm going to add a skin modifier and then add another subdivision modifier on top of this. For the skin modifier, turn on smooth shading so it's nicely smooth. And over here you can see we're getting this kind of issue. That's fine. This is happening because if I go into edit mode and I turn off this over here, you can see, you see this vertex, it has a red dotted circle around it. This is basically called a root, and that's something that a skin modifier needs. This basically tells the skin modifier to start skinning from here. You just need to select one of the end or starting vertices instead of something in the middle and mark it as root, and the issue goes away. So now if I turn this on, you can see it looks much better. Now, to decrease the thickness or the width of this, I need to press A to select all the vertices, then press Ctrl A to make this thinner. Right? And it's up to you how thin you want this to be. I think something along here should be fine. Then I can turn on proportional editing, select only these ends over here, press Ctrl A and just make them more thinner than the rest. This is not in the reference, I'm just doing it because I think it will look fine. Like, it will look a lot nicer. So, but you don't have to really do this. Okay. Let me just adjust it a bit more. Sure, something like this. And now you can see we have this very nice curve over here. That's super cool to see. And I can just move this over here and add a mirror modifier. And this time for the mirror, I'm going to use this part of the bed over here and change this to y-axis or z. Okay, in this case, it's the z-axis, and maybe move it back. Okay, awesome. Okay, now you can see our bed is done over here, and it looks very nice, just like what we see in our reference. Then we can go in and add some this wall over here. So I'm going to press Shift A, add a cube. We already done this with the building tutorial we did using booleans. So I'm just going to create this window part over here. And I think this much width is fine for the window. Okay. I'm just going to duplicate this cube for now and just hide it. And then over here, go to my edit option, boolean, and choose brush boolean difference. Then Alt H to unhide the other cube I created, scale it according to the size, and maybe scale it up. Okay, now I'm going to select this face over here, press I to insert this. Sure, let's say something like this. Then I can just delete this face, and I can also delete the bottom and back faces, right? And this is going to be the frame of the window. And I can give it a solidify modifier and give it some thickness all the way to the back of the window. Even though that part is never going to be seen, it's still nice to have it like logically make sense. Okay, something like this. And now you can see we have this very nice window over here. And I can add a bevel modifier because I like to bevel everything. Even just a tiny bit, it just makes it look a lot nicer. Oh, so I just applied scale, Control A, apply scale. You can see the solidify is too much. So let me just reduce it. Okay, something like this should be fine. Alright, now inside of this, we need to add some more components. So let me just Shift D to duplicate it, G and Y push this back, and P to parent this by selection. And I'm going to remove both of these modifiers from this for now. And over here, extrude this, scale it in, turn off proportional editing. Okay. Then Control R to add a loop cut over here. Control R, add a loop cut over here. I want to make sure both of them are exactly at the same dimension. So I'm going to press SZ0, and this basically completely flattens them out. Then I'm going to press Control B and bevel them. And now I can fill this in. And this is going to be the frame of our window. I can move it over here to the center, just like how I see in my reference, and again add a solidify, make sure my scale is applied. Okay. Okay, this looks really nice now. I'm going to add a bevel modifier to this too. Increase the segments. Sure, something like this, and shade it smooth. Okay, and then for the final touch, I can just add a plane over here, rotate it on the X by 90 degrees, move it in place, and just scale it up. This is going to be the mirror inside the window. Okay,